So tell us about onepot and what you guys are working on.
So we are automating chemistry with AI and robotics. We have our automated lab in South San Francisco, and we train models to run experiments in this lab and actually to make chemicals.
What sparked this idea? Like, what was like the problem that you kept seeing in the past that eventually led you to starting onepot?
Yes, I think like we both saw how like painfully slow synthesis is. Traditionally, synthesis has been done like manually overseas, usually, just because it's very like labor-heavy problem, and typically the way it's solved, you just like literally throw a lot of PhD-level chemists who work like 24/7 at the bench making molecules. So maybe Daniel, you can tell about your experience, and then I'll say a few words about mine, how we actually observed it in our work before. So, and we just, we're solving this issue now.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we both actually saw this like even like in high school. I think so. Like in I like in high school was doing some research in like chemistry department at Moscow State University. I was working in a lab where I had to make a series of amide coupling products.
In high school?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like I was working as a lab. So the lab was working on ligands to separate radioactive waste. So they had some like ideas on how those ligands should look like, and like ligands basically like molecules that take like metal, extract it, and like they just like like as a crab, they just catch the metal and they take it out. And Russia has like a lot of nuclear waste to get rid of, and lots of nuclear waste to separate. So
Okay,
like,
so like normal teenager stuff.
yeah, normal teenage stuff. And the product was like super simple. So like there is like this like acid, and you need to do like amide coupling on it, and you need to separate the products. And I spent like a ton of time, like it's like many months doing this. It was very annoying. And then like there is like one day I could not like purify the thing. So it was given to another like lady who worked in the lab, and she was doing very important thing. She was doing liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry, and it's like super advanced thing. Like as it looked at the time, she separated the product and she got like 100% purity, like perfect like NMR data. But then like in university, I also had to do research to synthesize molecules, and then over time moving towards ML, still like kept seeing this problem. And I think in like last job, before we started onepot, we had like to talk to customers, and like problem of synthesis was brought up like all the time. And when we just like looked at like if anyone is doing anything, there are like not so many companies in this space. So it kind of seemed like important problem to work on.
Is that where you guys met at your last company?
We actually met like a long time ago. We met back in Moscow.
Okay.
So I also did some like organic chemistry in high school, working in the lab. I realized pretty early on that I don't really enjoy this. And at that point, when I was like my first year of university, I was like looking for a lab that does like great sort of like research in the intersection of like computational work and chemistry. Daniel just started a bunch of really cool projects in this like organic chemistry lab on like ML research for organic chemistry. So it was like really great place to join, and that's where we met.
So you were pretty early to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, like what's really funny is that like Andrew didn't like working in the lab, and now like the loop closed. So he ended up in the lab again.
They brought you back.
No, it is like very valuable. Like in retrospect, probably like spending like a bit more time in the lab would be like really beneficial. But like the way we sort of like approach the problem is like very different, I guess, and like how traditionally it's being solved. So like there are just like so many different optimizations to the process of synthesis, and it just like makes absolutely no sense it takes so long. So like people can like regularly wait like 3-4 months for a synthesis of a compound, and it just like doesn't make sense why it's so long. There's like a lot of like research involved, but like given all the technology that is created now and that we developed internally as well, this process can be just sped up a lot, both research and experimentation.
Yeah, I'm interested in talking about, I guess, what bottleneck specifically onepot addresses. Why is it so much faster with onepot as opposed to going with traditional CROs?
And like maybe talk about what is the traditional process for people who don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so when we started, we actually just like decided to map out exact process. and the process like super annoying. I mean, a lot of time, to be fair, a lot of time spent on non-chemistry, non-technical things, which is also like very strange. So let's say you have a molecule and you have a structure that you want to make. Then you probably will go to CROs in China, in Eastern Europe, in India, and it will give them structure. And they will look at the structure, they will spend like a week or two looking at the structure, and then they will say, all right, we're going to do it, and here's how much. Depending on complexity, you either will pay like what's called fee for service. So they just tell you it's going to cost $3,000, and you're like, all right. Or it's going to be on FTE basis. So you're basically paying chemists by pretty much hour of their work to work on this. And you pay even if it fails, because it's like research. I mean, and then people start working on the reaction itself. And even if it's a single-step chemistry, it takes weeks to set up the experiment. It takes weeks to purify. Again, like, because there is a humans involved everywhere. Humans are heavily backlogged. Humans have like plenty of other things to work on. And then you also need to ship this. And often you need to ship this back to the US, which means that it might get stuck at customs and like stays there for like a month. Or like you will never get it back because it got stuck like forever. So all of this happens. But like the interesting thing is that like all of that can be solved with technology. You can solve the problem of generating an initial quote. You can provide instant pricing to customers if you want to. You just need to be able to analyze molecular structures really well. You can automate synthesis so you don't have to wait for anyone to become available. You can also work on purification, so purification is also automated. And then if you do it in the US, shipment is just, you drive to Victory Avenue, to FedEx office, you drop off the box, customer gets it next day.
How automated is your process? You talked about automation. So like, I don't know, on a percentage basis, like how much of your process is automated? From the beginning of like kind of planning the molecule up to having the molecule dry in a vial?
I think it's getting increasingly more automated, and it like gets automated on like different levels. So like there is like obviously hardware component, there is a software component, and then there is like ML/data component. So on the hardware, like we do a lot of work on just like making sure it's like running very smoothly, and like we can do things like very reliably and scalable, so that like like if you go to traditionally like place that does like even what's called like automated organic chemistry, you would see like purification chemist working on the like LCMS instrument, like babysitting every reaction, like every reaction mixture, making sure that like you get your product right. Like we, as Daniel mentioned, like there's just like a lot of things that can be automated, like including purification, and that all goes to like this like in between this like hardware and software layers. On the models and data side of things, we just like get this like increasing value because like we collect a lot of data on the experiments we run. Most of the experiments run just like they're purely like for data collection purposes, just like to improve the models we do, so they later can be deployed in the physical world. And this gives massive gains because it accelerates the process like that otherwise traditional company would need to go through when doing research. So we just compress it through using our ML models. So yeah.
I mean, to be fair, we still need someone to like unpack the boxes of chemicals.
Yeah.
So that's,
You don't have robots
robot
for that yet.
yeah, not yet, but we'll get there. So.
Yeah.
How much of it, so you described the automation, how much of it on both the hardware and software side still requires a lot of human judgment? Like what's the challenge in automation right now?
Solid handling. So like the problem is that like once you get the chemical, like our entire platform mostly operates on stock solutions. So we take a chemical, we dissolve it, and handling liquids is very simple. You can like aspirate in pipette, you can dispense, like everything gets very straightforward. The problem is getting this initial amount of chemical in the like vial or the tube. And some people like believe that handling solids is solved, and there are like robots that you can buy that will do this. But the problem is that once you have like 10,000 chemicals in stock, all those 10,000 are so different. All those different powders, some of them are sticky, some of them are like prone to static, and they like once you like try to move them, like they just like fly everywhere. Some of them are like just like rocks that you need like to break. So there is like so much variety in this, and this is like the hardest piece to automate. But the good thing is that you need to do this weighing only once. You need to weigh once to make stock solution, and once you have the stock solution, you just pipette all the way down.
So
And the rest, like outside of handling solids, the rest is like automated.
So the hardest part is whether or not the powders are sticky or they
Yeah.
fly all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, if like all the powders were like, I don't know, like table salt, probably could like just like buy a machine to dispense those solids as well. But there are like so many solids that are super tough to handle.
There's no model yet that can predict the stickiness of a powder yet.
Yeah, I mean,
But maybe you guys are working on that.
Yeah, I mean, even if you do, like, what do you do next with it? Like, even if you know that it's going to be sticky, this also means that you cannot use a robot. So
I suppose you could get the robot to understand that it is the way that it is, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I mean, it would be very cool to do some like teleoperation on like transferring solids, and then like train a model on this. So we don't have like really didn't get time for this, but it would be cool to do one day. So.
Okay.
In the broader picture of automation, do you think that that is a problem? I mean, you see a lot of companies going after automation now, especially in the life sciences. Do you think that that's a problem that they're also having?
Partially, I think like the problems that like all those like many of those companies they don't really like talking about full material flow. Like you would get an awesome tour of a lab where like robots doing something, moving things, and well, the question is like, where did solutions on the table come from? Where did you get all those reagents and chemicals? Like they're not like randomly spawn on your on your like kind of robots. They came from somewhere, and in many cases, these are people who actually dose those reagents and put them on the platform, and people don't really like talking about this.
I guess on the topic of labs, it seems like there's a big push now for automated labs in biology and chemistry. What are your thoughts of those, and like where are they going? Do you have strong feelings?
I think like what we sort of observe is that it's like really matters like what experiments you run. It's just like you can like build like insanely cool hardware, but without like the knowledge of what's going on, like it will be faster than like running it manually, right? But like you don't get as many gains as you could from this automated platform. So that's very like big effort of ours is sort of like bridging the hardware world and like the like intelligence world, and actually like make sure that like like there like you can generate like millions of hypotheses, but like making sure like you explore the like feasible ones, what like matters a lot.
And also like people tend to do like simpler things in general. So if you just like look at like most of the projects in the space, it's either biology, where you don't have like any like corrosive chemicals, you don't need to heat much. Like all you do is liquid handling. It's much easier. In chemistry, it's often materials, but those materials do handle powders, but those powders are actually nice to handle. So you can like get a robot to dispense those powders, and they're good to go.
Not sticky.
Yeah, not sticky. Like it's super annoying. Like it's just like when we started, we like done a lot of work ourselves on like transferring and moving chemicals around, and it's just like it's just tough. Yeah. So
You talked about material science. Is that part of? Maybe you can or cannot talk about this, but are a large percentage of your customers in material science, or are they mostly kind of in the drug discovery?
Before the interview, we talked about where do we get things from. So we actually get them from like a variety of sources. So many of the chemicals come from oil, and then they eventually being transformed into simpler chemicals. And those simpler chemicals are eventually transformed to more complex chemicals. And there's plenty of people who work on all the different other transformations of matter. But when you think about just like small molecule organic chemistry, there's like almost nobody who is working on this. And it's like the area that we focused on because like it seems like a very hard problem and very fun problem to work on. And the main users of small molecules are drug discovery companies, maybe like agrochemical, fragrances, but the vast majority is drug discovery.
Is that also like where most of the money is?
Yeah. So, well, it depends.
It depends.
It depends. So it depends also on the stage of the process. So we focus a lot on early stage preclinical work, and for us, like it's very clear why to do that. We just want to get exposure to as many chemistries as possible and collect as much data as possible about chemistry in general. So we want to see all those different reactions. People are doing all those different ideas they want to try as the compounds, because those ideas give us part of the molecules that react in those reactions, and we can combine and build this data set. But there's probably like a lot of money in manufacturing. There is a ton of money in agriculture. So yeah.
Beyond manufacturing, as it pertains to like drug discovery and agriculture, what might be other industries or applications that listeners might be surprised about hearing?
Other applications of small molecules?
Yeah, like other industries that your customers might be in, or other industries that you're interested in personally.
I think like Daniel had a good example with like high school project. Like all the synthesizing molecules for like managing like, let's say, nuclear waste or something like this. There are like a lot of applications that rely on small molecules in general. Like it's very interesting and like rich modality. Like if you look at the context of like therapeutics and drug discovery, just like the space of small molecules is like enormous. Like you don't have like clearly defined rules of like how to get to the matter you want to. Like in theory, it's like much more expressive as well than like what you can do with like biologics, just because you have like arbitrary complexity you can build.
I feel like you always hear about people saying like small molecules are so much more difficult than biologics, like antibody therapeutics. Why is that? Why do you think that is? Or like, why do you think people say that?
Well, I mean, if you work on peptides, like synthesizing a peptide is just like running same reaction multiple times. So you just do like amide coupling multiple times. You can optimize everything you do to do like this single reaction really well. You can build a robot to do this. You can buy it for like relatively cheap, and you just like fill in reagents and you put your sequence in, and you will get your peptide synthesized. It's like super easy. For small molecules, the problem is all like, just like how heterogeneous chemistry is. You have like, not as a state of matter, but like as of a number of problems and reactions you have. So some of the reactions will require inert atmosphere. Some of the reactions will require super corrosive reagents. Some of the reactions will require light. So there is like so much diversity in how you can set up experiments, and also like super sensitive to how you do this. So you might like slightly change conditions, and you change reaction from not working at all to like working like 100%.
I wanted to pivot a little bit. Just continuing, just talking about the industry. In 10 years, if everything goes well, and if even sooner the one pot empire succeeds, where do you think the industry as a whole will be? Let's talk about in 10 years' time.
Well, I mean, there are very strong tailwinds in the industry beyond one pot. So, I mean, it's clear that like one pot will change it a lot, but there is also other factors. So I think like this, today's Anthropic announcement about preclinical programs is a good sign of all the changes to come. And I mean, if you end up with like thousands zero-person biotechs, they all will need molecules to validate what they do. So this will be a good reason for one pot empire to grow. But also, like, seems like we do well on expanding reaction scope, on automating chemistry. So, and for us, it would be really great if like somebody like in 5 years would decide if they want to study chemistry, and they decided against it because one pot exists. So like the problem of chemistry
is that
solved.
Success?
Yeah, and then there's nothing to do in chemistry. So
Yeah, I think more broadly, we just like, I think there will be just like a lot more acceleration in the discovery process, and like it's like still very important to keep like the physical world in the loop. Like, I mean, there are people who say that you could just like, yeah, do like zero shot drug discovery, put it in the patients, and like, yeah, just go ahead and do that, today, even. So it's like, I think we're clearly like very far from this, and like, you know, we are just like really focused on like working with matter and like making the process fast. So like we really enjoy with working with companies who like iterate very quickly on their ideas, like who need like to get like data for their designs and like their drug discovery campaigns. I think there'll be just like a lot more of it, a lot more acceleration on like across all stages of the discovery. Yeah, that's the landscape.
On that point, what do you think about personalized medicine?
And clearly, like fast synthesis is like really needed here.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, generally I think with like small molecules we just like barely scratch the surface. Like whatever drug like space is estimated to be like 10 to the 60 number of molecules. Like we have like so many more magnitudes like to grow, that, you know, a lot more molecules needs to be synthesized and tested and validated and analyzed before like this becomes a reality. But like, sounds super exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, safety will be tough for personalized medicine. So you would like some adverse events in clinical trials, they're like super hard to predict. So like if this becomes a big thing, especially like in small molecule space, there should be like really good way to estimate toxicity of a molecule, like without actually like testing it on like tens or hundreds of people.
How far away do you think we are from predicting that toxicity?
It's hard. So the problem is that like many of those effects, they're like also dependent on like genetics of individual person who's getting this, and there's just like not enough data out there to make this prediction reliably at this point. So you would just like, I mean, you'd need data from all the failed clinical trials. Ideally, like you would need like everything sequenced for all the people who participated in those clinical trials, but you also would need to have like better understanding of their lifestyle and things like this.
Do you think there's not enough data from clinical trials, or do you think it's just not well reported from kind of like failed clinical trials?
Probably
or both?
Probably both. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there is like lots of good work on standardizing reporting format for clinical trials. It's actually like really easy to extract all the adverse events from clinical trial, but you just don't get like full picture for what happened. So, but one day, I mean, it's like possible. So.
I mean, what have you been thinking about recently that's been interesting?
I mean, we kind of talked about this like matter question already, but it's just like if you start thinking about where do things come from, there is actually like not so many blind spots left. So,
Well, like, what does that mean? There's not so many blind spots.
like so where do we like generally get things? So we mine some like, I don't know, like iron ore. We get oil. We get like some other minerals. We get water, and we cut trees and plants to get things, and those is being transformed. So we use water often as this. We take oil and we separate it so we can use some fuel. We can also use trees as fuel. So that works. We can do smelting of ore and we'll get like iron and we'll get all the other metals. And from the metals we get alloys and we can combine them together. We do a lot of work on how we can take simpler chemicals in oil, mostly in oil, and transform them with a set of reactions with a very large scale chemical production. And those chemicals are mostly used for either large scale industrial processes, or they're being used to manufacture polymers that we're that we're using. Like polymers are being used everywhere, like like clothing, packaging, like everything. And some minerals go into like other inorganic materials, so like they go to ceramics and stuff like that. So all the way down here, everything is very simple and very clear. I mean, there's like reliable industrial processes. You can find a factory that like makes a single one thing and it does it like super well. So you can find a single factory that does like like ammonia nitrate really well, and you will take this ammonia nitrate and you will grow more plants and you will grow more like vegetables and fruits. I don't know. So yeah, so it works. But like once you cross this, everything becomes super complicated. Once like complexity of matter grows beyond that, making drugs is super hard because you need to combine lots of small molecules, like small molecules into bigger, smaller molecules over many steps of very bespoke, very custom tailored transformations for that particular compound. If you want to produce a very advanced material, you also have like very specific conditions how you do all the mixing. It's not like properly industrialized in most cases. So, and when you look at this, actually, out of all those like advanced matter fields, actually, like, small molecule chemistry is like the most underdeveloped field. So.
And why is that? Is that just because the technology hasn't been there to do it, or the demand side isn't there?
In a way, both. So I mean, demand is high, but many people in industry decided that it's easier just to pay a lot of like really smart humans in China and India to do this for them, and they like really didn't want to work on this. But once you get like 1,000 zero-person biotechs, we might like get like beyond capacity of CROs in China and India, and what we're going to do now. And it just like the level of complexity, because like one of the analogies that people often use in small molecule chemistry is like Lego. So you take like multiple pieces, you combine them together, and you build a bigger molecule. But it's not that. Like you try to combine two pieces together, and you get like something completely different. And then like, and you actually don't know if you're going to get it or not. And it's unclear if those like pieces even like stick together. Like super tough to handle, super hard to predict. And until recently, we had like no hope in like automating any of that. I think like agents are changing this a lot. We have agents developing protocols for our hardware, controlling our instruments, executing experiments, optimizing. We could never do this like 5 years ago. Like it would be like something unimaginable. So
yeah, on the complexity side of things, it was just like each time you need most likely to make the compound that never existed before. So like whenever you produce like ammonia nitrate, like it's just like there are like whatever like 10 different ways of making it, and like with just like contract research organization, there's like word research that's like you basically like every synthesis is like a mini research project. You need to like figure out like what works well, how to connect this like Lego building blocks together to make sure like you don't get any of the like whatever weird combinations or you just make it reliably. You also need to think about like how do you actually maximize amount of material you would like to get. And that's especially like valuable for later stages, like beyond preclinical work. It's just like difficult. There are like a lot of difficulties at every step. Something just like may not be possible. You may not find the conditions that work. Like the images, like the corresponding reactions might not be discovered yet. It's like still like very active field if you just like look at how it was developed. Like look at 90s, 2000s, like 2010s, and today like all the different methods are improving, growing, and like things are just like becoming possible that were not possible before. Like I think like B12 is like B12 vitamin is like good example. How it like took whatever like 77 77 postdocs and like 19 PhD students or something like this to make it. And there's like there's actually there is a Wikipedia page about like B12 vitamin and separate Wikipedia page on B12 vitamin for synthesis. And it's just like there are like some pictures, some reports that were written in the process, and just like it's beautiful work. Like they took like an insane amount of effort and like experiments and failures and trials, and like accelerating that is like insanely valuable.
And are you saying now it's like you can approach it differently and like faster without the 77 postdocs? Like,
Yeah, if you look at like current like total synthesis labs, so total synthesis is the field of like making insanely complex molecules. Like things are much faster, but like still they're like insanely complex molecules, and like it's actually very like scary field in a way that like you may have like 20, 30 steps throughout, and then like you execute 19 steps and 20th doesn't work, and like you now need to do something because like it just like doesn't. You like try over and over again, like day after day, like week after week, and then like it can be like multi-year projects to optimize this like one last step. It's like that's the entire complexity of chemistry.
you mentioned twice zero shot labs or
Oh, there's 0% biotechs.
0%. So that assumes okay, there's no one there. It's not even like a solo person. It's an agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Tell me more about this, because that like I've never heard that before, and it sounds like this is something you conceptually have.
well, actually, I think it's not my idea, but I also cannot provide attribution because I don't remember.
Sure.
So, but like, and if you look at many biotechs right now, like the way they work is that like often they don't have a lab, they don't do any experiments themselves. They have an idea on how biology should work in that particular case, and they outsource everything they do from like
CRO.
virtual screening, even virtual screening often outsourced. They outsource actual synthesis, biology work. At some point, once like models become good enough, the question is like why agent cannot just do entire thing. If agent's provided with enough capital, why agent just cannot use all of that? And for us, it's just like really great because ideally you test ideas quickly. So if you came up with 10 molecules and you need to wait for the 3 months for them to be made, it's going to be super slow. And we can speed this up as much as we can.
Okay, that's a really cool idea.
But also, like, in 3 months, you like you do the synthesis, in 3 months you learn that nothing worked.
Yeah.
So
You need to wait other 3 months. Yeah.
actually, it must be like really hard to work as a chemist in a not in CRO, but like an actual like drug discovery company, because in CRO you probably don't know the outcome of the assays. So you just made the molecule, but imagine you work like super hard for 3 months. You made this molecule. It's like perfect spec. You got like this like nice white powder. You got like a milligram of it. You brought it to like some biologist, and they did the measurement and didn't work. And all your 3 months of work, it just it's must be super hard just like to manage this.
Yeah, I've been on that side. It's not fun. It sucks.
Yeah. So
I've got one more. What is like the craziest compound you've had to synthesize?
No, we had some favorites actually.
Okay, maybe favorites then.
Well, I mean, you'd need to draw it, right? So it's like I don't know, some like weird,
Extra sticky.
some weird like, and all the like 3D, like rich molecules are very interesting. The one that take like very interesting like 3D configuration in space. So like all the adamantane cages and things like this is like very interesting. Just like how it looks. And
You could mention it, and I could pop it up on the screen.
but I mean, there are like cases where you get like some like remember like hydrocycle with like sulfur, like the really cursed one, like it was like.
No, I'm
like,
I see way too many cursed things over the course of the day. So I'm like,
I didn't know that like those things exist in the first place. So
oh yes, okay, wait, yeah, I remember what you're talking about. Yeah.
So I mean, we use like relatively normal reactions, but we take all the reagents we can buy, and some of the reagents are like
Very exotic.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, so it's I don't know where they take it. I found a paper where like those compounds were published, and like it's super strange. Yeah.
Strange in what way?
It's not something you see every day.
Oh, okay.
It's just like a substructure that you have never seen in your life before.
Yeah.
So most of the molecules composed of the things you have seen before, and this particular part of the molecules you have never seen before.
Okay.
And yeah.
What is the most like challenging thing you've had to synthesize?
Well,
Or
I mean,
do those fall in the same bucket?
well, I mean, there are like very nice customers who order compounds that like clog our LCMS systems. So you get like an order of 30 molecules, and every single one of them clogs the thing. Yeah,
That's very valuable for us because it's like we just like learn how to prevent this from happening.
yeah, we have a model now that like warns us in advance about this happening.
So yeah, it's like really a big advantage to just like have everything happening under a single roof, just because like we have all the data flows. Like there's like a lot more data captured beyond just like reaction mixture analysis, and like that's very cool to have all this because like it really like streamlines all the processes that are happening.
I mean, if people like underestimate like physical reality about synthesis as well. So I mean, even like supplying chemicals is super tough. So we have like a set of direct suppliers who we have their catalogs, we know how often they ship on time. But like, if there is a tool that does retrosynthesis, this tool doesn't care about like if it's actually available in a warehouse like somewhere in like Illinois. Like, but in our case, we actually know that, and we build like everything around that reality inside and outside of the lab. And inside the lab, for example, clocks. Like,
Can you supply most chemicals from the U.S.? Like, are they pretty easy to find?
yeah, onepot would not be possible to build anywhere other than US and China. So,
Wow.
So the problem is that like you need like really strong like domestic market for chemicals, and it's obviously like very strong in China. There's like no question about that, but it's like also super strong in the US. I think like number of like available chemicals in Russia is probably like 2 orders of magnitude lower than it is in the US. So
2 magnitudes?
yeah,
Wow.
so you could not build like something like that.
Wow.
And I mean, it's the same thing about Europe. So you cannot like really build like a good like fast synthesis company in Europe.
But they can come to you. Europeans can use you.
Yeah, we ship to Europe. Yeah, it's going through customs the opposite way is much easier than.
What's crazy, the synthesis is still faster than like ordering from suppliers in Europe.
Wow.
So you order the molecules in Europe, get them delivered to some like other European country, right? But like you can come to us and we'll ship it across like 2 borders and it'll get delivered faster. Yeah.
Is it mainly because of customs?
Uh,
Or is it like a technical?
No, it's mostly technical. So, I mean,
okay.
we have like a few days at it. So I think like one of the recent orders, like order placed on Friday, synthesis is done by Thursday, it's shipped on Thursday, it arrived on Monday to destination country in Europe, and closest competitor would ship from Eastern Europe, and it would take like 5 weeks.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's like so much faster, and so yeah, that's why.
For people who don't know what onepot is, what is your like the simplest explanation of what onepot is?
We take small molecules and we combine them and transform into bigger molecules. And those bigger molecules turn out to be super useful for many industries and mostly drug discovery and pharma.
And on top of that, you learn about how to work with those and ultimately train a model so that you have better understanding of what you can produce.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like super valuable. So I think like one of the interesting questions that like recently brought up is that should companies outsource chemistry or do it in-house? And in reality, you probably should outsource, but like to centralized place that learns from all the data. Because you might work on a specific scaffold, like next day you got a different program, you work on a very different chemistry. Every data you collected so far is not useful for what you're going to work on now. In our case, we train on all the data we collect. It's also covering very different parts of chemical space. Like molecules between like different customers are super different. and you can combine all those learnings and improve prediction and outcomes for all the customers together.
So you benefit from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a, but you need like this broad coverage of chemical space, and you can get broad coverage only if you cover lots of different chemistries from lots of different people.
Yeah, and if you're like a, let's say, pharma company who has like internal chemistry department, you really don't have like an incentive to collect a lot of chemistry data. Like you have like very applied like purpose for your like chemistry department. You need to make molecules for your program, right? Like you don't really want to waste like any time on like side quests and like improving synthesis, making it like much faster. You can like maybe throw more resources at it, and just like that's how you'd achieve the speed up. Like here we have like very clear incentive to like make synthesis faster and to like think a lot about like the data we collect, how to like make the best use of the data. Like yeah, we just like have a very big like motivation of like utilizing it the most.
Do you see more and more small or mid-sized biotechs, or I guess pharma companies, outsourcing their chemistry?
I think they all do, like, or like almost all of them outsource chemistry. So not all of them outsource biology. So in some cases, people have like some biological assay that's very proprietary, and like they have like very specific idea on how to do this. But chemistry is broadly outsourced. So yeah. So I think like, I mean, we do end up like having like you end up offering something that people can get in China right now. They will just get like much slower. So it will take like so much more time for them to do this. I think over time you will see more and more reactions that we do that you cannot actually get elsewhere. And this means that like you will get access to like more interesting parts of chemical space, and it's going to be like much better than like any external CROs, and it's going to be much better than internal chemistry as well.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's a wrap.
Awesome.
Yep.